So will Chris deal the first? We'll see. He'll be the first person to defeat Braverman. Braverman has kept on 6, but he did keep a 1-lander. You're right here. So Thoughtseize from Chris shows Braverman's hand. It's going to be 1 land, a Thoughtseize, a Tarmogoyf, 2 Shardless Agents, and a Vendilion Click.
So this is a fine 6-card hand here for Michael. It's not ideal, but he has a castable Thoughtseize, and Christopher is the type of deck that's not going to put Michael under immediate pressure, so Michael does have a little bit of time to draw out of it.
Chris's deck, another one of these, really just Esper, a different take on, I guess, a Stoneblade or Esper-style control deck.
Yeah, the Thopter Sword package makes it quite a bit different. 4 copies of Dig Through Time in the list now, which is something that I feel like all of these decks are starting to incorporate.
And Chris, looks like he's just going to prove that Michael can hit land, ask if Michael can hit land drops. He'll Thoughtseize the Thoughtseize to protect his own threats. Now goes for Ponder on turn 2.
Yeah, Michael's hand is so redundant outside of the 1 copy of Thoughtseize that there isn't a lot to be gained by taking the 1 threat. I suppose he can take the Tarmogoyf, but at that point Michael gets to resolve a Thoughtseize, slowing Christopher down. And then if Michael makes his land drops, he's looking at Vendilion Click and 2 copies of Shardless Agent, which is a lot of power there. Michael can definitely draw out.
You have to think, if Michael does hit his land drops, the kind of hand he has here is actually very good against an Esper deck. Multiple Shardless Agents.
Yeah, he's got a lot of very powerful anti-attrition elements. He can play a powerful game, but he's got to be able to hit his land drops to do it.
Yeah, power won't matter if he can't cast any of his cards. Michael misses the 2nd land, and we go over to Chris's turn 3. He'll play Baleful Strix, draw a card here. He has lands, he has threats. He's definitely, he is going to get to play all his cards. Makes the 3rd land up and passes. Does Braverman hit? Looks like no.
Yeah, he's, unfortunately for him, picked up copies of Hymn to Torak, which are very, very powerful in this kind of matchup, but again, gotta be able to cast them.
Yeah, multiple Hymns, multiple Shardless Agents. This is the type of hand he'd want here, but he'd want it on curve. 4th land for Chris. This means Creeping Tar Pit is now an option. And he'll press the advantage. It's Snapcaster Mage. We'll see if it's Thoughtseize or Ponder.
I'm not a huge fan of the Thoughtseize against an opponent who is on the verge of discarding the hand size here. But Chris might want to insulate himself quite a bit from a particular card. Though he has the Swords of Plowshares in his hand right now for the Tarmogoyf he knows about, so we'll see where this goes.
And the beats here, Michael, each turn of this game, it appears, has drawn a 2-mana spell. So adding to his hand of Goyf and Shardless Agents, he has added an Abrupt Decay and 2 copies of Hymn to Turok. So once Michael hits that land, he's online.
It gets real good.
It's looks like just 2-for-1s every turn.
Yep.
And Chris takes Hymn to Turok. Now, this is a little confusing to me because if Michael hits the land, he still has a Hymn to Turok, and I'm just not certain how many cards Chris actually will have.
Well, it's sort of a question of what else you're going to do. I don't think that Christopher really wants to take the Tarmogoyf because he's got Swords of Plowshares ready. The 3-mana spells are off the table. Abrupt Decay doesn't matter very much. So, yes, it's a little weird to live with 1 hand, but Chris still wants to protect his hand, and the 2nd hand gives... the 2nd hymn potentially gives Michael a sequence of hymn you. Christopher doesn't draw well over the 2 turns, and then Michael starts deploying his power.
All right, well, Michael does now hit his 2nd land. He'll go for Hymn to Turok. In response, Chris will play Brainstorm. He's going to hide some of the best cards here. See that Swords to Plowshares? He's going to hide, and it looks like Dig Through Time is going to be the other one on top of his deck.
Yeah, Dig Through Time, a very powerful response to him. 2 more cards in the graveyard. Chris can cast it on the cheap.
Now we'll see which 2 he loses. And despite being stuck for lands for so many turns, you feel like Braverman could get this game.
The problem is, I think the big problem is long-term is the Creeping Tar Pit. Michael's hand is nothing but blockers. Abrupt Decay can't touch it.
It's true. Shardless is a deck that traditionally has been weak to man lands.
And, you know, Christopher's probably going to get to truck in for a couple points here and there. He's got a flyer. Michael still doesn't have a creature in play. And I'm worried that the Creeping Tar Pit might just be too much to overcome by the time Michael's able to start deploying his cards.
A great Hymn to Turok for Michael, though, takes care of the Supreme Verdict out of Chris's hand. Leaves Chris with Snapcaster Mage, Seed of the Synod in his hand.
Yep. Well, Christopher got to choose what he wanted to lose off the hymn, potentially. He got to brainstorm a response. And now just contemplating, he's got Snapcaster Mage in hand, so there's a lot of different paths here. He's got Thought Scour, Brainstorm, and Ponder. He has information on what the top card of his deck is. There's also an argument for just firing up the Tar Pit, bashing, and saying go.
Let's see what he goes with. See this an odd played. He'll go ahead and swing for 3. No tar pit here. He'll put Braverman down to 16. And Chris will just pass. Leaving up Swords to Plowshares and Snapcaster Mage. And now here's land 3 from Michael.
All right, this is, I mean, Michael gets something going now. He's still in bad shape, but
he's got a shot. If these Cascades work out well for him, he could be back in this.
Definitely. Again, I think there's a long-term issue with the creeping tar pit, but the rest of the board should be trivial for Michael to manage at this point.
And we're going to start with the first Charlotte's Agent from Braverman. That's going to cascade past some lands, right into Ancestral Vision for the first one. Now, this is traditionally one of Shardless's very best cascades, but extra cards doesn't seem to be what Michael actually. I mean, it's still good here, but it's not the hold up in the hand.
It's a weird thing because almost everything in Michael's deck at this point is not great to cascade into. A creature is okay, but it's not like it does very much to contain the board beyond what's already out there. The 2/2 blocks the 2/1. So a removal spell is not excellent here. I guess you get to kill Baleful Strix.
So maybe Ancestral Vision is what you want.
Discard spell is not great because Christopher is almost close to empty-handed anyway. So yes, Ancestral Visions is a powerful card to hit here, but most of Michael's cascades are just pretty low impact, and the Ancestral is as well.
Ancestral draws him some good ones: Baleful Strix, Land, and Brainstorm. Now, eventually, he has, I believe, 2 copies of Wasteland in his deck. He's going to have to find one of those if he wants to deal with the Creeping Tar Pit.
Yep.
He has 3 copies of Disfigure in his sideboard. If he's brought any of those in, that will give him some extra answers to Creeping Tar Pit. But that's about it for ways that he can answer the 3/2.
As you mentioned, manlands, especially Creeping Tar Pit, just a vulnerability of this deck. For the most part, they're just trying to block, and that's their answer, but Creeping Tar Pit, of course, can't be blocked.
Chris, nothing on end step. He'll just swing in, trade away the Snapcaster with the Charlotte's Agent, and he'll pass again. Dig Through Time, Swords to Plowshares in hand. Snapcaster Mage as well. It's an interesting strategy by Chris. He's going to try to just play fair Magic against Shardless, which is traditionally a very tough place to be. The deck is very good at getting 2-for-1s.
It's possible he's moved away from the Thopter Sword package just because of the amount of removal that a deck like Shardless Sultai has for it. And Christopher might have just converted into just a Esper good stuff deck.
Braverman is going to start with a Brainstorm. I suppose he really is just looking for those wastelands, it would seem.
That's the big draw. Well, although Christopher kind of looks like he's up to other stuff. It's not like he started off the action here by just clocking Michael every turn. So I'm sure Michael wants a wasteland at some point, but it may not be the immediate priority because Christopher is not indicating that that's what the game is about right now.
Fair point. It's going to be Snapcaster Mage. This is in response to the Brainstorm. Snapcaster targeting a Thought Scour in Chris's graveyard. So scour away a Thought Seize into land, draw a land, get the Snapcaster Mage, and now he'll go for Dig Through Time. This is all with the Brainstorm on the stack.
And this is why Christopher was so patient with the Snapcaster Mage over the last couple turns, as he was trying to set up this sequence.
See him drawing into Baleful Strix, Force of Wills, Brainstorm, additional lands. We'll see what he wants to keep.
But now you can see why Michael kept the hand. I mean, he's got a huge resource advantage at this point. Christopher with not a lot going on. He can take a Force of Will and a Brainstorm, I suppose, is not shabby off of this Dig Through Time, but not a lot of proactive stuff to be done here.
Yeah, it is hard to go toe-to-toe with Shardless. They're very good at running people out of cards. See this Brainstorm resolving for Braverman. A pair of lands and an Abrupt Decay. And I think, right, I guess he's doing this so that he can set up his Shardless Agent.
Yep. And I think, part of it is we always get to see the player's hand, so that influences how we perceive these things. But I think that if I was in Christopher's spot against an opponent who stalled on lands with a lot of power in their hand, I would have been much more on the early Creeping Tar Pit, just try to beat this guy up before he draws out of this kind of game plan.
So Michael had set up the cascade so he cascaded through one of his lands into Baleful Strix that then drew a card. Drew Michael another land, so he'll pass back. Michael still with a full grip of 7 cards. And now the boards. Now Chris has got moved over to Creeping Tar Pit. It's going to go ahead and swing for 3. That'll put Braverman down to 10.
Yeah, and part of this is just out of necessity. He, can't really fight the card advantage battle anymore. Nothing. He can't attack with anything else. So now, Creeping Tar Pit's got to try to carry the day.
We'll see if it can. No Wasteland yet for Michael, but he did draw Brainstorm for the turn. Has another fetch land. He'll get to look. If he wants to try to find that Wasteland, he'll get a lot of looks at it. So we'll start with Brainstorm. Shardless Agent, Hymn to Turok. Among his options here. Toxic Deluge, it looks like.
Still scrambling for an answer to the Tar Pit, though.
Yeah, no answer to that. Now, is it possible that he can just race the Tar Pit? He can get enough power in play to do that?
It's going to be tough. Christopher does have Source of Plowshares. He's got Baleful Strix. He's set up to navigate that kind of race. But Michael may not have any other option is part of the problem.
Does have another Shardless Agent that he can set up a Cascade for. Looks like he is going to do that land and Hymn to Turok to the top of his deck. So I think he's trying to Shardless through onto a Hymn to Turok. Land 5's into play. It's another duel.
The damage racing thing that you brought up might be Michael's only route, though. The tools in his hand may not permit him to do anything else.
If he doesn't find Wasteland, that is his route. So you see he's going to cast Shardless. He'll Cascade through Toxic Deluge, actually, into Hymn to Turok. And Chris, he is at the ready. Also being very aware, you see here, of their time left in the round. 3 minutes and some change remaining.
I think Christopher can sense that, Michael can't really answer the Tar Pit. And Chris can kind of feel like, given enough time, I should be in good shape here. Yes, Michael can draw to Wasteland, but he doesn't have that much time left to do it.
Brainstorm draws into Dig Through Time, Thought Scour, and a fetch land for Anderson. Once again, the situation of hiding the good cards. He'll leave the lands in his hand along with the cantrips. Bury the Dig Through Time.
Force of Will as well, hoping that Michael just does not hit the Thought Scour here. He can draw to Force with a blue card left over and be able to protect himself.
And the 2 random cards. Swords to Plowshares and Thought Scour. Great hits. They leave in Chris with 2 lands.
Yep, that's bad news.
And Shardless Agent will swing. Chris is going to go ahead and take it. He's down to 13. Now, one thing Braverman can draw into if he's kept them in is Deathrite Shaman.
Yes, that's another way to manage a race. It's not an answer to the Tar Pit per se, but given his resource advantage, that should be enough to pull him out of this.
Creeping Tar Pit will swing, and that puts Braverman down to 7. Chris draws for the turn. He draws his copy of Force of Will, says go. No mana to hard cast it yet either. Draw for Braverman is a fetch land. And he's got to be a little worried about cracking that. That would put him down to 6. That takes a turn off his clock.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I think he's going to try to stay away from cracking that Catacombs as long as he can avoid it.
Vendilion Click in hand. As well, if he wants to continue to add to the board. Tarmogoyf, a lot of great cards for Braverman. It's going to be another Baleful Strix. He'll draw. Finds Deathrite Shaman. That's pretty good here.
Yeah, because Christopher is getting into a spot here. He's trying to hold off on it, but he's going to have to start trading soon. There aren't a lot of creatures in the graveyard right now, but once these trades start occurring, Christopher can manage his own graveyard to some extent by delving, but Michael's graveyard is just going to build up a little bit, and that Deathrite Shaman can start going to work.
And here's a swing. They'll trade Snapcaster Mage with a Shardless Agent on a Braverman. He'll play Tarmogoyf. Looks like he'll play Deathrite Shaman, and now he'll pass. Deathrite has got to be the big concern on the board.
And Christopher has left the Dig Through Time on the top of his deck here, and I imagine he's going to try to dig here for an answer to Deathrite Shaman and hope to be able to chump block and race the rest of the board.
That said, though, he still needs 3 swings off Creeping Tar Pit, and at 10 life, I'm not sure he's ahead in this race.
No, I think it's starting to shift around into Michael's favor. But Dig Through Time can catch Christopher back up. There's a lot of big cards for him to hit right now.
He could, if he's left in the Thopter combo, he could always just dig through time into the combo. That's very hard, could be hard for Michael to race.
He's also got a main deck Supreme Verdict. I don't know if it's in his deck anymore. I imagine that it is. But that would be a big draw here as well.
We're on Chris's side. I believe we have hit time in the round, so this will be Chris. This will be the turn 0 for the players. Each will, including this, each will have 3 turns. Chris will start with dig through time.
So Sword of the Meek was one of his draws, so he's, I would imagine, kept in the combo if that's the case.
All right, well, there's half of it. He has another copy of Dig Through Time, Sword of the Meek, Snapcaster Mage, Force of Will, Brainstorm, a land. Does have a Swords to Plowshares if he just wants to try to race and take care of Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, the Swords to Plowshares only pulls Michael up to 8, which means that Creeping Tar Pit's still 3 turns away. But the board's starting to get a little bit overwhelming here. Christopher at 10, he's facing down quite a bit of pressure on the other side.
Yeah, even if he blocks the Tarmogoyf, it's 4 damage a turn from Michael. Chris would, in theory, win first if Michael plays nothing.
Right, but
that just seems unlikely at this point. Looks like he'll go that route, however. He'll take swords. And one other. All right. Due to some warnings earlier in the game, it's going to be 7 extra turns rather than 5. So ruling from the judge. Chris will start with, will continue with Brainstorm. Finds Thoughtseize, a fetch land. And another fetch land. Not a lot of help.
yeah, and Chris spending his mana this way also means that he's potentially losing out on a Tar Pit attack or his ability to hold up something like Swords to Plowshares if he does want to attack with the Tar Pit.
Well, if he's not attacking with Tar Pit this turn, it really shows that he's playing for a draw in the game, I would think.
Yeah.
And actually, some interesting about the standings math here. So, if you notice here, Chris at 10 and 2, Michael at 12 and 0. This pairing means that there are no players at 11 and 1. Michael has built a pretty significant lead on the field.
Yeah, he was essentially locked after the last round at 12 and 0.
Now, if Michael, rather than drawing, goes on a 16-0 run or some really large run like that, it'll actually allow players with lower records to start making it into the top 8.
Because some X and 3 type of players who should have, in quotes, been able to draw in and such get knocked out instead, and it could potentially push up inferior records into the top 8.
So Chris will go Swords to Plowshares on Deathrite Shaman. It puts Michael up to 8. Will he still activate that Tar Pit, though?
At this point, it seems incongruous that you would plow the Deathrite Shaman if you are playing for a draw. I mean, if Chris is going after Deathrite Shaman, to me that indicates that he's actually trying to win this game. Because I know on the table it looks like the Baleful Strix blocks the Tarmogoyf, but that's unlikely to ever happen.
Can't imagine that works. So many cards in Braverman's hand. All it would take, if you went for the play, all it would take was 1 Abrupt Decay for Michael to just kill Chris the turn. And you see Abrupt Decay hitting Baleful Strix anyway. Land from Braverman. And here comes the army of creatures. 2 Baleful Strixes, a Shardless Agent, and a Tarmogoyf. Ask what the count is on Tarmogoyf. It's 5/6, I believe.
Land creature, sorcery, artifact.
Yeah,
Instant at the minimum.
Yeah, your regular 4 plus artifact. Yeah, just curious to swords the Deathrite Shaman and then not swing Creeping Tar Pit. If you're going to play for a draw situation, you'd want to, I think, swords the Tarmogoyf.
Right, it's one of the, I feel like you got to pick a path there. You're either trying to clock with Creeping Tar Pit, getting rid of the Deathrite Shaman, and hoping that your chump blocks plus removal allow you to cross the finish line. Or you say, the ship sailed, I'm going to lose this damage race, and I'm just going to try to prevent as much damage and hope to get to a draw.
Looks like an activation of Creeping Tar Pit here is going to jump in front of Tarmogoyf. Chris will go down to 4. It will keep him alive this turn, though. Things will just get even harder next turn.
Yep. And Michael's still with the leftovers. There's that Vendilion click from the opening hand that hasn't even been touched yet. Now Michael's brainstormed and shuffled his deck some, so maybe it's there, maybe it's not. But Michael definitely has gas left over.
Yeah, he's not out of resources, and that's something that Charlotte is so impressive at doing. Is just to continue to play more 2-for-1s and have more cards in hand.
And that's to go back to what feels like a million terms ago, why I think Christopher needed to be punching on that tar pit early and often. Because once Michael starts getting to his land drops, the avalanche of card advantage and board control just adds up.
Turn 2, it's a draw from Chris. He draws Counterspell. He'll counter the Vendilion click and then offer the concession. So for Michael Braverman, the win streak continues. He's now at 13-0.
And as you mentioned, this is another player here in Chris Anderson who is now kind of getting pushed down. There's a lot of extra wins, in essence, accumulating on Michael's side here in terms of